And shifting focus now, the Trump administration's recent actions in Venezuela and, of course, its rhetoric regarding places such as Greenland has exposed its willingness to both sideline long-standing international law as well as NATO principles. Now, despite major pushback from its allies, government officials in Washington say that these moves are required for national security purposes, as the U.S. continues to test the patience of its transatlantic partners. CGTN's Zhou Jiaxin asks, at what point will they finally say enough is enough?
The United States seizure of Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro has laid bare a hard truth. America is showing greater disregard for international law, and its unilateral approach to diplomacy no longer spares its allies. Now, no one can imagine that European leaders and politicians are bracing themselves for a similar ill-fated scenario when it comes to Greenland's precautious future.
We don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way.
If you have such a major ally as the United States being basically negligent of its own obligations and being very responsible in the rhetoric, at least, when it comes to the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of other allies in the NATO, this is unprecedented.
The White House is now discussing the options to annex Greenland, including military actions to invade Denmark. This is more than a diplomatic irritant.
It's also concerning for the international relations in terms of the stability of the system that we have built since the World War II. This seems to be an erosion also of international institutions, at least threat of erosion to a large degree.
The subdued response from most EU capitals to the Venezuela operation reveals a continent trapped between principle and power.
If we're thinking about great power politics and spheres of influence, Venezuela falls within the Americas. The United States, through its national security strategy last month, has been emphasizing making the Western Hemisphere more prominent in terms of its own space. And so I think for many Europeans, there's really little to gain from criticizing Trump, because doing that is only going to antagonize him.
The Trump administration's national security strategy, with what experts call a Trump corollary to the Moran Doctrine, has turned European autonomy into a potential strategic liability. Abandonment of Ukraine or wars, a real threat to European territory like Greenland.
The Europeans are trying to balance support for Ukraine and trying to ensure that the Americans don't abandon Ukraine with their talks about peace with Russia, while at the same time having to navigate and negotiate this tension over Greenland. Let's be honest, Denmark or even the other countries in NATO with Denmark are not going to withstand American military pressure to take Greenland.
But if the U.S. can unilaterally dismantle international norms in its backyard, then what stops it from doing the same in Europe's neighborhood?
Europe would act probably on the level of European Union, basically breaking in with the relationship with the United States. I don't think it will be able to enter into any kind of military hostilities because of its nuclear power, etc. But there's going to be breaching the trade agreements, probably sanctions on the United States for the first time.
Yet Europe's strategic awakening remains slow and uneven, and that's despite open threats against its territory.
We are faced with the fact that America has changed, and therefore America's relationship with Europe has changed. But there has been a lot of talk over the last decade or so in Europe about the need for greater autonomy, strategic independence, but we've seen very little of that in actual practice.
Europe's credibility in the global south has also been weakened, in part due to perceived double standards. When U.S. officials describe regime changes as democracy promotion or dismiss sovereignty as obstacles to negotiations, Europe faces pressure to define clear red lines or speak out and against Washington's actions.
Of course, it doesn't sit well with the values that they project when it comes to the rules-based order, the international law, and just the global stage of international relations that haven't been in any way kind of amended the norms that are still standing. And that is true.
The Europeans, yes, they're struggling with their traditional partner of the last 80 odd years, but that doesn't mean that there aren't others out there that they can neither forget about working with, nor should they.
Greenland's destiny has focused European attention. If a traditional ally can threaten the territory of a NATO ally, then it's unlikely that any European nation is safe under the current security order. The question now is Europe willing to challenge and stand up to these provocations?